You know Shaletta makes you laugh, but did you know Shaletta Brundage can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Shaletta Brundage founded Shaletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African American subject experts at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast quality commercial content. And Shaletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Shaletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.
Want your boss to put some real action behind the rhetoric when they talk about making your workplace more inclusive? Find out how to hold their feet to the fire and demand diversity on the Diversity Dude podcast.
Hello there, and welcome to the Diversity Dude podcast, recognized as one of the top 100 diversity and inclusion podcasts in the U.S. I'm your host, Lambert Fisher, marriage and family therapist, award-winning author, national speaker on the topic of multicultural awareness and diversity. And whether it be through my one-on-one relationship building efforts as a therapist or my informing and empowering efforts as an author and speaker, know that my personal mission is to do my part to improve the world one strengthened relationship at a time. So, today I'd like to share with you a few thoughts about how we still need the Voting Rights Act. So, the Supreme Court of the United States recently issued a ruling on the Voting Rights Act, the VRA, a historic federal civil rights law that outlawed racial discrimination in voting and redistricting. Now, the Voting Rights Act was originally created to ensure that the voices of Black citizens could be heard in this country and prevented the effects of racial discrimination when jurisdiction created maps that would dilute the Black vote and Black representation in government. Thankfully, even without being a political professional, I have enough awareness to understand the idea of the argument that if a state is made up of 40% Black people, then Black people should have 40% of the political representation in some way. And if that argument is the case, then the fact that the recent ruling all but gives permission for political leaders to move the lines in ways that benefit them, effectively reducing the percentage of Black representation in the population, then that would ruffle some feathers. And yet, I can also understand the words expressed by those who argue that laws that are based on racial and ethnic identification should not be considered as necessary as they were in years past, considering how much growth we've made since then. So, how do I and how can you reconcile these two seemingly contradictory perspectives? Well, if you'd allow me just a few moments of your time, I'd like to share with you a few thoughts about how we still need the Voting Rights Act. Consideration number one is this. It's legitimate to be upset by the recent ruling. There are many reasons to be upset by the ruling on the Voting Rights Act. Just some are upset because it was seen as one of the most monumental accomplishments of the civil rights movement. People sacrificed and struggled through very difficult times, times when they had to fight to be seen, recognized, and included. And finally, there was a federal law that was in place. While not perfect, it helped significantly in reducing the barriers preventing Black people from registering to vote and other efforts to dilute the power of their vote. Later, amendments allowed for non-English materials to be provided, reducing even further barriers. With all this being considered, it's reasonable to hear arguments against the Voting Rights Act and to at least ask the question, what part of that plan do you disagree with? Do you actually think it should be harder for some American citizens to vote more so than other American citizens? And if so, how do you expect them to react when your actions seem to suggest a desire to make a right of citizenship something that not everyone should have equal access to? Interestingly, while there are unfortunately many who still boldly express that not everyone should have the same rights in this country, even if you're law-abiding citizens, there are some who argue that any anger directed at them is misguided and that taking away rights is not their motivation at all. Which brings me into consideration number two. It's legitimate to see a need for change. Many argue that the goal of the Voting Rights Act changes were never to take away or make things more difficult the rights of others. Instead, the goal was simply to ensure that laws on the books today are updated to reflect progress that's been made in this country. And I must admit, there is some merit to this argument. After all, Mississippi recently relaxed its strict public profanity laws. And until recently, it was illegal to accept artificial limbs as payments in pawn shops in some states. And more significantly, many states only recently repealed laws banning interracial marriage. Change makes sense. Many see laws like the Voting Rights Act of 1965 in a similar way, seeing it as necessary during the time of overt racism and whites only signs and other forms of formal racial segregation and public accommodations that were only legally outlawed by the Civil Rights Act of 1964, barely a year prior. And look, at that time period, in contrast to today, we can say, well, look, you're not wrestling with the same things you're wrestling with then. Thus, you shouldn't need the same accommodations today as you need then. Some even quote one of the only Martin Luther King Jr. quotes they know and suggest that it's time to no longer have laws judging people by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And you know what? In many ways, I agree with what Martin Luther King shared then, and I agree with that dream now, with the sentiment today. However, despite how much progress has been made since then, and thankfully there has been a lot of progress, I do not believe that we've made enough progress to say that Martin's dream has truly been fulfilled today. Which brings me to consideration number three. Not everyone calling for change actually wants progress. Just because we no longer have legally sanctioned racial segregation and overt racist expressions and actions filling our personal and professional interactions doesn't mean that there are covert beliefs and perspectives and subtle behaviors and actions that reflect a desire for separation by race, fueled sometimes by fear or discomfort, or even a desire for a reinforcement of superiority over certain racial ethnic groups, coupled by a minimizing of the impact and power of certain racial ethnic groups' contributions and positions of influence in aspects of business and economy, as well as political decision making. One thing that supports this perspective is not just the decision to pursue changes to the Voting Rights Act, since I already shared, that could be viewed by some in very neutrally different ways. What is reality is the immediacy and speed by which multiple states rushed to redraw congressional districts to gain control in anticipation of the upcoming election. Essentially, the argument being proposed is the motivation for their way of voting map redistricting having been drawn was to ensure that the large amount of ethnic minority voters receive representation that reflected their large percentage in the state. These voting maps should be redrawn in a colorblind manner, they argue. Unfortunately, by doing so, the large percentage of minority voters are conveniently being split up into smaller percentage of other larger groups, thus diluting their voting power under the guise of colorblind fairness. As a result, there's a good chance that these states will lose their black political representatives, not because these political representatives lost their votes, so the people who voted for them, those can stay the same, but because the power of those votes were dispersed and diluted very strategically. Now, remember, I'm a fan of the dream of not needing color to be the determining factor. However, actions like this reveal that this is not today's reality. Think about it. If it were, there would be no need to make the changes in the maps. Regardless of how the Voting Rights Act influenced the voting maps years ago, if your focus was on letting the best candidate win, then you wouldn't have a problem sending your candidate that you prefer to every district and trusting that they'll win over everyone, the majority of the votes, no matter who makes up the population of that area. After all, the best political leaders claim to represent the needs of all their constituents. Thus, the challenge should be to take on the challenge of showing everyone, no matter their similarities or their differences, that you see them, that you plan to work to understand them and their unique needs, and to follow it up with action that supports it. If we could count on this being the case, I would support the changes to the Voting Rights Act because the actions of our leaders would show that it's not necessary in the way it was before. But unfortunately, that's not what our political leaders are doing. They're instead saying this trend of you having the political voting power to elect your own political leaders who will inconvenience us by ensuring that your voice is heard and making sure that we allocate time and resources to meeting your needs too. Ooh, that's too much. We got to put a stop to that. And that's where we find ourselves today. With all that being said, my hope for you is that you will be able to see the difference between a goal worth aspiring to and the necessary accommodations that need to be in place while we're on our way to that goal. I would love to be able to say that we've made enough progress that the Voting Rights Act isn't necessary, but the immediate actions of our political leaders shows that this is not the case. Future political elections and decisions will reveal even more. And for all the rest of us who are not political leaders, I encourage you to resist the temptation of being gaslit in your efforts by trying to convince you that you should stop being pessimistic and see that you've already achieved your dream of color no longer mattering. And all the while, intentional efforts are being made to remove your power, your influence, and your opportunity for your needs and the needs of all racial and ethnic minorities in this country to be seen, valued, and supported. If that matters to you, no matter your cultural identification, then do whatever you can to let your voice be heard in private, personal conversations, as well as in public, wherever the opportunity arises. And most importantly, when the time comes, vote. Vote for the leaders you hope will work toward change for everyone, not just some. And with that, I'll say thanks again for listening today to the Diversity Do podcast. If you found it positive and insightful, then be sure to like and subscribe so I know which topics you'd like me to share more on in the future and share with the friends so they can be encouraged as well. And you can find out how you can cultivate a culturally safe environment in your workplace by visiting lambertsfisher.com/playbook for a free guide. You can also learn more about my award-winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice, which offers unique ways to positively address the often divisive topic of diversity, helping professionals like you in your efforts to meet the greatest variety of cultural needs possible for those whom you serve. And if you haven't heard it yet, I invite you to visit TED.com and check out my talk called What to Do When You Offend Someone, where I offer a positive and practical perspective on how to navigate unintentional offenses in daily life. To date, it's been viewed over 500,000 times. Check it out for yourself. And if you're encouraged by it, share it with the friends so they can be encouraged as well. And as usual, I look forward to addressing as many topics as possible in future podcasts to help you improve as many relationships as possible at work, at home, and in your community. And as always, remember this: you don't need to know everything about everyone in order to have a positive impact on someone. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a great day.
Tune in each week and find out how to demand and implement diversity at your job. To hear more, check out previous Diversity Dude shows on ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com.
Welcome to Old National Bank.
I understand you're all about protection.
Well, we protect you in all kinds of ways, with advanced fraud monitoring and secure digital banking to protect you today, and with dedicated personal bankers to protect your tomorrow.
I'm impressed.
Protection for today and tomorrow.
Could I just...
Oh, go for it.
Old National Bank. Just another reason to get old.
Where'd you get this?
It came with my couch.
It's Shaletta Brundage, Minnesota's autism mom. I need you to help me help stop Medicaid fraud. If your child needs autism services, choose a provider carefully. Legitimate providers won't pressure you to sign up, offer you gift cards, or contact you unexpectedly for personal information. Instead, a good provider will develop an individualized plan for your child and communicate with you regularly. If your child receives autism services, make sure the services are actually provided. Watch your mail for those explanation of benefits letters, right? They show you the services billed under your child's name. Look that thing over. Did your child get all of the services on the dates listed? Now listen, if you have concerns, trust your instincts and report suspected fraud to the Minnesota Department of Human Services at mn.gov/DHS/report-fraud. Or you can always give them a call at 1-800-657-3750.
When she walked in on her first day at Doherty Family College at the University of St. Thomas, she didn't know a soul.
I'm Zion, and I'm a second year at DFC.
A year later, and so many changes for Zion.
I love my friends here. I couldn't do anything without them. We support each other all the time.
At Doherty Family College, Zion also finds support on the academic side. Like all DFC students, Zion can count on a team committed to her success. Doherty Family College is Minnesota's affordable private college option. DFC students earn their associate's degree and then can transition to a 4-year college or university for their bachelor's. Many are students of color or first in their family to go to college.
It's nice to see people that look like you pursuing an education, wanting to succeed academically.
Zion encourages any high school student looking for a college home to do what she did and apply to Doherty Family College.
All the support you could need is here.
Ready to make your move and experience Doherty Family College for yourself? Then schedule your visit to the Minneapolis campus at dfc.stthomas.edu/visit.